My name is Natalie Blake, and for 7 years, I gave everything to a man who never saw me. Not really. I was the executive assistant to Garrett Kane, the founder of a boutique marketing firm in Chicago. When I started, it was just the two of us and a folding table. Now, it's a 50-person company with luxury clients and a rooftop office. And guess who built that system? The workflows, the budgets, the pitches, the hiring? Me. But if you ask Garrett, he built it alone. To him, I was just Natalie, the assistant, someone who ordered lunch and color-coded his calendar. He'd joke in meetings that I was his life manager or call me Queen Post-it. Everyone laughed. I smiled. But deep down, it stung. I knew his schedule better than he did. I handled crisis after crisis while he drank old fashions with clients and took credit for ideas I whispered to him moments before he spoke. But I stayed because I believed loyalty mattered. That someday he'd notice. That when promotion time came, I'd be more than a glorified receptionist. But then came the gala. Every year, Garrett throws a winter gala for the team. Black tie, catered, expensive. This year, it was hosted at the Skyline Pavilion. I spent 3 months planning it. He didn't even thank me. Instead, that night, I watched him introduce his new VP of Operations, a role I'd been unofficially doing for the past 3 years. Her name was Maya. She was sleek, sharp, and half as experienced as me. When Garrett announced her promotion, he raised a glass and said, "Now I can finally stop doing all the heavy lifting around here." Laughter. I stood there frozen. Maya gave me a tight smile. Garrett didn't even glance in my direction. I felt like I'd been slapped in front of 50 people. Later that night, as I was helping the waitstaff clean up, because of course I was, Maya walked over and said, "Garrett mentioned you're basically the office mom." That's cute. Cute. I went home that night and cried in the shower. But something shifted in me. I realized I was never going to be seen. Not for what I actually did. Not for who I really was. And Garrett? He was never going to give me my moment. So I decided to take it myself. The next morning, I walked into the office, calm, composed, and for the first time, unburdened. I printed my resignation letter, placed it on Garrett's desk, and quietly started packing my things. 30 minutes later, he strutted into the office, sunglasses still on from the night before. He picked up the letter and read it. Then he laughed. "Seriously, Nat? You're quitting? After everything I've done for you?" I didn't flinch. "No worries," he smirked. "I'll have Maya take over your stuff. Shouldn't be too hard." I just nodded. But as I walked out of that office for the last time, I said, "You might want to read the second page, Garrett." Because the letter? Oh, it wasn't just a resignation. It was a detailed audit of every shady invoice, every unpaid intern, every client lie, every time he crossed a line. It was all backed by emails, memos, and hard receipts. And it wasn't going to HR. It was going to someone else entirely. Someone Garrett had forgotten all about. But not me. Never me. I walked out of that office and into the sun like a prisoner who'd just been released. But it wasn't freedom, not yet. I still had bills, rent, a car loan, and no job. That weekend, I updated my resume, scrubbed the bitterness from my tone, and started applying, not just to jobs, but to possibilities. I reached out to old contacts, joined freelancer sites, even cold emailed companies I admired. On Tuesday, I got a text from Heather. "Heather, Ben's asking if you're begging for your job back yet." Smug as ever. I wanted to scream. Instead, I screenshotted the text and saved it in a folder titled Fuel. By Friday, I landed a freelance gig writing marketing copy for a small wellness brand. It paid peanuts, but it was mine. No Ben. No micromanagement. Just results. Weeks passed. One client turned into 3. I was working harder than ever, but I felt alive again. And then I got an email from a mid-sized startup looking for a content strategist. They'd read one of my blog posts on LinkedIn, the one I'd written after quitting, and loved my voice. They wanted to talk. Fast. At the interview, I was honest. I left my last job because I realized I wasn't being challenged or respected. I wanted more. So I built it. They offered me double what I was making before. Full autonomy, a team of my own, remote flexibility, benefits, respect. I said yes. Then I got another text from Heather. Heather, Ben's furious. The new hire keeps making mistakes and he's blaming everyone but himself. I replied with a simple, tell him I hope he finds someone who can write like I did. Good luck. But what came next? I never saw coming. 2 weeks later, I received a formal letter in the mail. Thick envelope. His company's letterhead. My name printed clean across the front. Inside, a letter from Ben, asking if I'd consider coming back, this time as a contract consultant. He needed someone to clean up the content mess his new hire left behind. I stared at the page, stunned. This man, who laughed when I quit, who belittled me for months, now needed my help. He even had the nerve to write, "We always valued your work. Perhaps we didn't express it enough." Oh, the irony. I took a deep breath, pulled out a pen, and drafted a reply that would haunt him forever. But I didn't send it just yet. First, I needed him to feel what I felt, the dismissal, the underestimation, the cold silence. So I waited. 3 days later, Heather texted again. Heather, he's spiraling. Said, and I quote, she was never that good anyway. Then told us to forget you. That was it. Now, I knew what I had to do. I opened a new Google Doc, typed one sentence. This isn't a resignation. It's a revelation. Then I wrote the letter that would wipe that smug little smile off his face, line by brutal, honest line. But I wasn't done yet, because I had one more surprise coming. And Ben? He had no idea who I'd become. Not yet. I thought resigning would give me peace. But peace? It was nowhere in sight. Instead, every hour since quitting felt like I was grieving something deeper than a job. Not just the career I built, but the trust one once had in people like Victor. He was still laughing, still smirking across conference rooms, still pretending I just had a breakdown and stormed off dramatically. No one knew the real reason I left. But that was about to change. The letter I wrote wasn't just a resignation. It was a revelation. I'd poured every truth, every betrayal, every dirty secret into it, and saved it as a draft on my personal laptop, because I wasn't just going to send it and vanish. No, Victor had made me invisible for too long. Now he was going to feel what it meant to be seen. 2 days after I left, I got a call from Karen, our HR manager. She sounded anxious. Hey, Emma, we, just realized your exit interview form wasn't completed. Would you be open to sending something in writing? I nearly laughed. They had no idea what they were asking for. I said, sure, Karen. I'll send my thoughts. Then I opened the letter. Reread it. Tears hit the keyboard. Not from sadness this time. From release. Then I hit send. Within 30 minutes, my phone was blowing up. Karen. Lisa from compliance. Even Brian, the COO, was suddenly very concerned and wanted to discuss my experience. Why? Because that letter didn't just talk about Victor's cruelty. It named what he did. How he took credit for my product strategy that saved the company $1.2 million. How he would gaslight me during presentations, cutting me off, twisting facts, making me look incompetent. How he mocked me behind my back and said to another director, Emma's just a cute face who got lucky. Let her keep thinking she's smart. I'd quoted it word for word, with receipts. And best of all, I'd attached a confidential report I'd kept, documenting every change he made to our financial projections to make himself look better to upper management, even if it meant sabotaging long-term growth. The silence that followed was deafening. For 2 days, I didn't hear a word. Then, on the third morning, a LinkedIn message from a former coworker came in. Girl, Victor's been pulled from the Q4 Leadership Summit. Word is they're doing a full internal audit. Also, your letter? It's going around like wildfire. That same day, I got a message from a woman I'd never met. Jessica, she wrote. Hi, Emma. I left the company last year. I had my own issues with Victor, but I didn't know anyone else had gone through it. Your letter? It gave me chills. Thank you. But not everyone was celebrating. Victor? He was spiraling. A week later, I heard from another insider that he was calling meetings left and right, demanding to know who leaked confidential memos, accusing others of being part of a smear campaign. Classic narcissist behavior. I wanted to let it end there, but then I remembered what he once told me. When I was crying quietly after he humiliated me in a team call, he leaned in and whispered, "You're replaceable. Don't take it personal." So I didn't. I took it public. That weekend, I posted a carefully redacted version of my resignation letter on my personal blog. No names, no company identifiers. But the story was unmistakable, and it went viral. 300,000 reads in 4 days. Comments pouring in. Other women and men sharing their victor stories. Stories of bosses who used charm and cruelty as tools of power. Of being mocked, dismissed, erased, silenced. My inbox was full of messages like, "I thought I was the problem. Thank you for showing me I wasn't crazy. You gave words to the thing I could never explain." I forwarded this to my therapist. And then, a headline. Tech exec on leave amid misconduct investigation. I didn't need to read the article. I already knew who it was. Victor's picture was right beneath the headline. Gone was the smug grin. In its place, a man who realized the thing he thought he could bury was now the thing that buried him. But this story isn't about revenge. It's about restoration. Because what came next changed everything. A recruiter I'd spoken to months earlier reached out again. "Emma, I just read your piece. I'm building something new. We need voices like yours at the table. Want in?" For the first time in months, I smiled. Not because Victor was gone, but because I finally remembered who I was. Before they made me feel so small, I walked into my tiny one-bedroom apartment with a stack of boxes and a heart full of silence. No more buzzing phone. No more fake team meetings. No more toxic jokes from Brad or soul-crushing presentations where he'd slap his name on my work. I should have felt free. Instead, I felt raw, like my nerves were still outside my skin. I sat on the floor, the letter I'd written still clutched in my hand, the one I left on Brad's desk. I knew it would find him, and I knew it would hurt, but I didn't write it for revenge. I wrote it because the truth needed to live somewhere. Dear Brad, you laughed when I quit, because you thought I had nothing, because you thought I was no one. But let me remind you, you didn't create me. You used me, and I let you, because I was naive enough to believe loyalty would be returned. You stole my ideas. You took credit for my hours of work. You gave me titles without pay and praise without substance. Every win you celebrated was a bullet through my dignity. But here's the part that'll sting, Brad. Every deal you closed in the past year, that was my strategy. Every presentation that made you CEO of the year, my slides, my numbers, my nights spent crying in the office bathroom. So laugh, Brad, because your empire was built on my blood. But you won't be laughing for long, because I kept receipts. And I'm not walking away quietly. Best, Samantha. I had to walk away from that version of me. The girl who thought working harder meant getting noticed. Who thought being quiet was the same as being strong. But I wasn't silent anymore. And I didn't plan on disappearing. That same week, I started writing. Not a blog, not a social media rant. A report, a fully documented expose, emails, time-stamped files, internal communication, contracts with my initials edited out. Everything Brad used, misused, or manipulated. It wasn't bitterness that fueled me. It was justice. Because for every Samantha out there, there's a Brad. And I wasn't going to let mine get away with it. One afternoon, just as the sun hit that soft, golden hour, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. New York area code. I let it go to voicemail. But curiosity won. "Hi, this is Valerie from the Ledger. We received an anonymous tip about business malpractice at Bradmore Consulting. If you're willing to talk, we're very interested." I stared at the phone, heart hammering. That was me. They got the file. They wanted the story. A week later, we met in a quiet cafe. Valerie was sharp, kind, and all business. "I've seen whistleblower dossiers before," she said, flipping through the pages I gave her. "But this one? It's airtight. You've got something big here." I nodded, nervous. I'm not doing this for attention. I just want people to know the truth. And they will, she promised. Because when this goes live, Brad smiled, it won't just fade. It'll be wiped clean off. I exhaled. It was finally happening. The article dropped on a Thursday morning. Front page of the business section. Bradmore Consulting CEO accused of stealing employee work, falsifying credits. They didn't name me, but anyone inside that building? They knew. By noon, the story was trending. By evening, Brad was forced to issue a statement. And it was the weakest thing I'd ever read. Unsubstantiated claims. Former disgruntled employee. Internal investigation underway. But the damage was done. By the end of the week, 3 more former employees came forward. By the second week, 2 of Brad's biggest clients pulled their contracts. And then, poetic justice. An email from Brad. Subject, we need to talk. Samantha, I didn't realize you felt this way. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel undervalued. Let's meet and discuss. Maybe there's a way we can work together again. Brad. I stared at the screen and laughed. Now he wanted to talk? Now that the walls were crumbling, the clients were leaving, and the mask was slipping? I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to Valerie. She chuckled. Desperate. Classic narcissist panic move. And just like that, the tides turned. People who used to ignore me now wanted interviews. Recruiters reached out, not just with jobs, but leadership positions. One of them, a woman named Eva, offered me something I never had before, respect. You don't just have skills, she said. You have courage. We need people like you. I joined her firm the next month as director of strategy. With my name on every deck, every memo, every win. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. The next morning, my resignation email was the talk of the office. But no one dared to speak to me directly. Not even Dylan. The tension in the air was thicker than the years of abuse I had endured under that roof. Dylan didn't acknowledge the letter in front of anyone, but I knew he'd read it. His eyes, they weren't smug anymore. They were tight, nervous, haunted. And I wasn't done yet. As I packed up the last of my things, the HR director, Maria, knocked softly on my cubicle wall. She looked pale. Dylan's asked to see you in his office, she whispered, like she was warning me, not inviting me. I nodded, calmly. I wasn't afraid anymore. When I walked into his office, Dylan stood at the window, arms crossed. The same man who used to belittle me in front of clients now couldn't even look me in the eye. You really went all in with that letter, huh? He said without turning around. I didn't flinch. Everything I wrote was the truth. He finally turned. That letter, you copied legal? You attached timelines? Screenshots? Email threads? I smiled. Yes, and they weren't just for you. I blind copied every board member. Oh, and one of your biggest clients too, remember Anderson and Wells? The one you lied to about the quarterly results. His face turned red so fast I thought he might faint. You're trying to ruin me. No, I said, my voice calm but steady. I'm just giving you what you gave me. Reality. Accountability. He opened his mouth, probably to hurl some veiled threat. But I cut him off. And before you try to spin some retaliation story, remember this, I kept receipts. Of everything. Your fake reimbursements, your backdated contract approvals, even the way you rerouted commissions to your own account. You thought I was just a quiet little doormat. But Dylan, quiet doesn't mean stupid. He slumped into his chair like the truth had physically hit him. I gave this company everything, I continued, standing tall. Late nights, missed birthdays, weekends, my health. And you rewarded me with disrespect, dismissal, and deliberate sabotage. He didn't respond. I'm walking away now, but I'm not walking out defeated. With that, I turned and left without waiting for his reply. 2 weeks passed. I had started freelancing, taking consulting gigs on my own terms, with former clients reaching out directly after reading my letter. Apparently, my reputation spoke louder than Dylan's. Then I got a call from Maria. You might want to check the news, she said. I opened my laptop. Senior executive at StratEdge under internal investigation. Whistleblower letter triggers audit. Resignations follow. Dylan was out. The company was in damage control. And me? I wasn't gloating. But I did feel something powerful. Closure. Not revenge. Not exactly. But justice. That night, I sat down and wrote one final letter. To myself. I listed every reason I stayed too long. Every excuse I made for people like Dylan. Every part of myself I had sacrificed. And then I tore it up. Because that wasn't me anymore. I was no longer the person who needed approval to feel worthy. I wasn't chasing promotions or validation. I had found something far greater: peace, climax, fallout, and emotional closure. The day of my exit interview arrived. But it wasn't just that. It was also the day Daniel, his boss Mr. Carrington, the regional HR manager, and 3 top executives from our client company all sat down in the same room. And me? I walked in like the calm before a storm. I was dressed sharply, not to impress, but to command presence. I slid a copy of the letter across the table. Mr. Carrington adjusted his glasses. Daniel looked confused, then nervous. Real nervous. I didn't say a word. The letter spoke for me. It started with the story of a girl who gave her all. Late nights, early mornings, always saying yes. Always trying to prove she belonged in a room full of men who smirked when she spoke, who interrupted her, who whispered behind her back. I detailed everything, not just what Daniel said, but how the company allowed it. The recorded meetings, the screenshots, the ignored HR reports, the pay gap evidence, the clients who noticed and even apologized to me privately. And finally, I explained why I was quitting. Not because I couldn't handle it, but because I finally realized I was never meant to shrink for someone else's comfort. Daniel's face turned pale as the executives flipped through page after page. Mr. Carrington cleared his throat. Daniel, is this true? Daniel stuttered. I mean, it's all taken out of context. She's exaggerating. I slid a USB drive across the table. Play the file labeled boardroom_recording_March_5. Then let me know if I'm still exaggerating. They didn't play it right then, but they didn't need to. Daniel knew what was on it. When the meeting ended, I stood up, shook hands with the executive VP, and walked out with my head held high. Daniel tried to follow me out. Listen, can we talk, just the 2 of us? I didn't even look at him. You had years to talk to me like a human being. You used every second of that time to treat me like dirt. Now, go enjoy the hole you dug for yourself. And I left. 1 week later, I got a call. Daniel was fired. Not let go. Not transferred. Fired. With a formal announcement made to the entire office about violations of company ethics and abuse of power. But that wasn't the end. 2 other women came forward after my letter circulated internally. Then another. Then another. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd kept quiet for too long. I started receiving messages from people who said, "Thank you. Your letter gave me the courage to speak. You said what I've been scared to say for years." And that's when it hit me. I didn't just quit a job. I cracked the dam. A month later, I got an offer from one of our former clients. Name your salary. We need someone like you leading our innovation division. And we saw how you handled a bully with class. I accepted. Same city, way higher pay, and a team that actually valued what I brought to the table. Oh, and guess what? They offered me Daniel's old office chair. I told them no. I bought my own. Brand new. Just like the life I was finally building. If you're still here, here's what I'll leave you with. Some people laugh when you quit because they think they won. Let them laugh. Then write your letter. Let your truth echo louder than their lies. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't watching them fall. It's rising so high they can't even see you anymore.